Hello guys, today's video I'm going to do a demonstration for 2018 version MS Flexible Suspension System. It's much easier to modify and also professional. This is the most popular setup for current day. Okay, let's get started. I'm going to use MSL chassis as today's demonstration. MSL is type of chassis which is easier to get started with MS Flexible Suspension System. For the other MS chassis, the concept is same. Let's talk about the tool you need for this modification. First, you need a Tamiya handsaw, the item number 74024, or the other handsaw works as well, as long as it can cut a straight line. Second, razor blade or any kind of cutting blade works as well. Third, Tamiya finishing sandpaper, item number 87024, or any kind of sandpaper at number 1000, 1500, 2000 works as well. Number 4, micro milling machine. With machine vise, I'm going to use this most popular Proxxon MF70 as a sample. Number 5, the cutting adapter. This is optional, but it's better to have it. Of course, this video will including some tips of without using cutting adapter. Number 6, the drill bit. The drill bit size is preferred between 4.3mm to 4.7mm. Number 7, center punch tool. I got this from local Home Depot, and we're gonna use this tool to expand the spring in between 5.2mm to 5.5mm. So make sure your center punch tool is big enough to do that job. Number 8, hammer and a plier. Any kind of hammer and plier works as well. Okay, right now we have all 7 Dragon Balls. Now we can make a wish for MS Flexible Suspension car. Just kidding. First, I'm going to start with center of chassis. Make a cutting line with a handsaw. The line needs to be chasing along with the notch between the counter gear and the shaft gear. So I'm going to do the same cutting on both rear and front to cut off the both front and the rear gear cover insert. Make sure the line needs to be straight as possible as you can. So it's very important to make a cutting line first. And also, please make sure do not damage the barrel line on both gear cover insert. Next, we're gonna move to center of the chassis, and we're going to remove the barrel line on the bridge connector, which connects a front and a rear bumper. For today's setup, I will only cut down about 4mm. I will use step clamp to hold the chassis. Make sure it is straight and level. There's some tricky part I'm going to show you to mount the chassis on top of the machine. I will set 2 6mm aluminum spacer on each side of mounting point on either front or rear bumper. Then fill up the bearing compartment with 2 brand new AA bearing to have maximum reinforcement when I set up the clamp on top of the chassis barrel. Then place one of the end of chassis with aluminum spacer on the middle of the gap on top of the XY table. And push forward. Make sure the both spacer have a support on top of the machine in order to it will level with the gap. Okay, next I'm going to cut the chassis. First, remove the barrel line on the bottom of the counter gear notch. And make sure do not overcut it. Slowly and layer by layer remove the line. Then we are going to cut down 4mm on the bridge connector. Also remove the extra plastic located on the end of nose. After you finish both ends of the center chassis, make sure you use razor or blade to remove extra plastic remaining on all the cutting point to make the surface look a little bit nicer and smoother. Okay, before I move to the next step, I'm pretty sure some people have questions to ask about the old style, which is remove all the bridge connector. So the one on the left is the old style, and on the right is the new style. This car on my hand is my build on 2017. It has old style bumper and a bridge connector. When I twist the bumper, it has more flexibility. And the orange blue car is my new style I built on 2018, and the bumper has less flexibility. For the difference between two different setups, I'm going to make another video to talk about it. Anyway, the old style or new style, they'll depend on track layout, overall setups, and also your experience. There's no shortcut. Next, I'm going to modify front and the rear bumper. Basically, both bumpers have same type of cutting, so I'm going to just give a detailed cutting direction for the front bumper only. Remove all plastic and marked, including joint connector and the plastic around the gear notch. And also don't forget the both small under support pieces. Okay, this is how it looks like. I'm going to mount the bumper on top of the cutting adapter. This adapter, I already made 2 videos to talk about it. So please just click the link below for the detail. Okay, anyway, first I'm going to remove both small under support piece. You can either use micro milling machine to remove it, or just use a very good plastic cutter to cut it off. Either way, make sure to not damage the plastic around it. Next, I'm going to remove all the plastic, which I white mark on the connector joint and shaft gear notch. Make sure trim slowly and layer by layer. Normally, I reserve about 2.5 millimeter thickness on the base. It's really depend on how you adjust your spring. I'm going to talk about it later when I put everything together. As I mentioned, we're going to reserve about 2.5 millimeter on the base. So right now it is 2.3 millimeter. It is still good. If you don't have the adapter, you can use the vise, which is come with the micro milling machine, by simply press and hold the bumper on top of the vise, but make sure adjust the gap of the vise to fit the little gear notch, which is located on the bottom of the chassis. Make sure hold steady and trim slowly and soft. And also make sure do not trim all the way. You have to do a very thin layer by layer. Before I finish the rear and front bumper, there is a very tricky part which is a lot of new racers missed. On the front and rear bumper, you need to make a extra notch for the counter gear because when suspension system moves, the counter gear stay in the same altitude, but the gear notch on the bottom of the bumper will move up. So you might be no enough room for the counter gear when the altitude change during this action. The easiest solution is by trim an extra gear notch to help with it. I will set up the bumper on top of the micro milling machine and cut 0.7 millimeter down where the edges of the counter gear located. This is the extra gear notch I just made. Let me do a very simple test. Here's 2 front bumpers which is already cut, but one has an extra gear notch and another one doesn't have it. Right now, I'm going to set up the counter gear on the chassis, then install the front bumper which doesn't have the extra gear notch. Now I'm going to push up the bumper, simulate the suspension system motion. Right now you will notice the counter gear contact the bottom of the gear notch and it got blocked. Okay, I will replace the front bumper which has the extra gear notch I made. I will do the same thing, push up the bumper, simulate the suspension system motion. Right now you can see the counter gear still move freely. Moving to the next, I'm going to do some modification on the support joint on both front and rear bumper. The post on the chassis is about 4.15 millimeter diameter, and the holes of the support joint on the front and rear bumper is about 4.25 millimeter diameter. So it's pretty tight fit. Because of that, the movement of the suspension is too firm. So the solution is expand the hole which is big enough by using the drill bit. I'm going to start with 4.2 millimeter drill bit. First, remember the hole on the bumper is about 4.20 millimeter. So the purpose of using 4.2 millimeter or 4.25 millimeter first, because I'm trying to expand the hole a little by little, and also try to clean the scrap remaining around the hole. Here's my tip. Try to expand the hole little by little, so the hole will be more even, more round, and more smooth inside the surface. Now I'm going to use 4.4 millimeter or 4.5 millimeter drill bit to expand the hole to destination size. If you have drill bit handle, just go ahead and use the handle. If you don't, you can just like me, use a napkin to cover around the drill bit, and in this case you can have more grips. So when you're turning, make sure slowly and evenly. Make sure do not rush. I just finished one. As you can see, the one on the left is obviously bigger than the other one on the right. There's another tip I want to share. If you have a reamer, you can use a reamer to expand one side of the hole, and then use 4.4 millimeter or 4.5 millimeter drill bit to expand all the way. So as you can see right here, the one on the left I used the regular way, and the one on the other side I used the reamer. So it's almost looks the same thing. Next, I'm going to do the gear cover insert modification. The white mark is the location you need to be handled very carefully. Do not damage it. First, let's use the plastic cutter to remove the extra plastic remaining on the left and the right. Then you are going to be carefully remove the barrel line on the white marker location. Make sure only remove the barrel line. Do not damage or overcutting the surface. If you have a cutting adapter, just put the gear insert on the bumper and sit on the adapter and mount on top of the machine. Then carefully remove the barrel line only. Then after you finish, set a number 1000 or number 1500 Tamiya sandpaper on top of the setting board to polish the surface. And also there's another option. Use the plastic cutter to remove the extra plastic remaining on the left and the right. Then use the blade to remove the barrel line. After that, set a number 1000 or number 1500 Tamiya sandpaper on top of a setting board to polish the surface. Right now, I'm pretty much 70% finished. I'm going to try to put the bumper back to the chassis, do some adjustment. After I put everything together, you will notice the suspension moves pretty firm. That's because you need to fix the connector T. There's a trapezoid-shaped T on the connector joint. You need to file that 10 to 15% smaller and make it to be a rectangle shape. So make sure file a little by little and keep putting back to the chassis until suspension move freely. There are two tricky parts on the front and the rear bumper. On the front bumper, try to move up and down, feel the resistance. Normally, the front has more resistance from the bottom of the connector T, and the gear cover insert always doesn't have too much resistance. But on the rear bumper is different. Rear bumper has more resistance on top of the gear cover insert than the bottom of the connector T. So use a sandpaper to slowly adjust the gear cover insert on the rear bumper until you feel it can move freely. I'm pretty much finished the chassis setup. Next, I'm going to set up the spring. The spring, always use the black soft one. As you can see, the spring is barely fit to the pole. Simple solution to fix that it is by using a center punch tool to expand the spring. Insert the spring on top of the punching tool, push down, use a plier to hold the top of the spring, then use a hammer to hit the plier. Force the spring to move down in order to the punch tool can expand the spring. Make sure switch side. Try to expand the spring to 4.6 to 4.7 millimeter diameter. You probably will fail a couple times in the beginning trial, but eventually you will get used to it. I just expanded 2 springs. Make sure a pair of the expanded spring need to be same height as possible. Insert the spring to the pole and try to move the suspension system up and down. Make sure it's soft and smooth. I just finished all 4 springs. I will set up the spring on top of the pole. Here's the tricky part. Reserve about 2.2-2.5 millimeter room for the bumper. The best setting, I think, the rear need to be softer than the front. So reserve a little bit more on the rear and less on the front. You will notice my rear spring is shorter than my front because I expand a little bit more on the rear spring. Next is our final step, making the underplate support for the rear and the front bumper. It's a U-shaped piece, which all kind of rear multi-roller stay can be used for it. Here are some samples of the rear multi-roller stay, depending on what you have on your hand. Of course, FRP version works as well, but my personal preferred carbon. It's lighter and stronger. Today's video, I will use this item number 15499 as a sample. First, you need to remove the left and the right wing on the roller stay. Make a cutting line by pen or blade. Make sure the line needs to be chasing from the end of the mounting point, which is right here. Then either using micro milling machine to remove the wing, or either you can use Dremel. That works as well. This is how it looks like after I finish. And next, I'm going to remove the corner on each side. Make about a 45-degree cutting line from the bottom of the mounting point to the middle of the mounting point. Either using Dremel to follow the cutting line, remove both corners, or either use micro milling machine. If you are using micro milling machine, I will set 2 modal shafts on the bottom of the mounting point and also in the middle of the mounting point. Then clamp on the vise. Press and hold the carbon fiber with finger. It will give you a 45-degree of the cutting angle. Then starting to moving your micro milling machine to make the cut. So this is going to be how it looks like after you finish cutting. At the final, you will see the underplate got blocked by the gear notch on the bottom of the chassis. So I'm going to make some room for it. Create a cutting line in between these 2 mounting points, then make a cut by either Dremel or micro milling machine. So after I finish, this is how it looks like. So the room in the middle will bypass the gear notch. Okay, right now I have all the parts made and ready for the assembly. And also during assembly, you need to apply some grease. The one in blue, it is the extra soft grease. The one in red, it is the extra hard grease. Which one is better for today's setting? The answer is red extra hard grease. I'm going to apply at all the contact joint, which is bumper and the chassis wheel contact, including all the notch, pole, and the top of the spring. Apply both rear and the front bumper. After that, place rear and front bumper on the chassis and set the carbon underplate on top of the chassis. And then set the carbon underplate on top of the bumper. Use 15mm screws to lock the bumper, chassis, and the underplate together. After finish, on top of the chassis, use Tamiya M2 lock nut to secure the top. Here is the tricky part. That's the most people fail in their MS suspension system. By using extra hard grease, it will give a suspension system a very slow and delayed recovery, as you can see on the video. But if you use extra soft glue grease, it will give suspension system a very smooth and faster recovery. Maybe most of the people think fast and smooth recovery is good, but that's wrong. Slow and delayed recovery will give more stability. So that will be my next video of MS suspension detailed setup guide. Okay, anyway, that'll be all for today's video. If you have any concern or any mistake I made in the video, or any update information which I didn't include in this video, please leave a comment or email to service@m4d10.com. Thank you for your watching. If you like my channel, please go ahead and subscribe my channel. I also have Instagram. Please scan the QR code or search for Matt_10. I also have website m4d10.com. There will be an online shop.